some very interesting state government action against raising rent prices. So we've talked here previously about algorithmic, basically programs, consortiums, and companies that have been buying up real estate and that landlords can then self-enter into, where they can collude with each other to set rental markets and to increase aggregate prices above where normal rent inflation is. We're now actually seeing a report out of the state of Arizona where the Attorney General is suing RealPage, which is a company, an organization, and landlords, and accusing them of conspiring to illegally raise rents. We have a bit of a taste from a local news report there on the ground that we just wanted to play for all of you. Let's take a listen.
It's a story many Valley renters know all too well. Major spikes in their own rent.
$500 to $600, and I'm like, okay, that's a bit steep.
And the next year, they raised it. I think it was like $200 a month.
State Attorney General Chris Mays feels these price hikes aren't a coincidence, but possibly a conspiracy.
I don't think it's a stretch to say that people were made homeless by this scheme.
A recent lawsuit from Mays is pointing the finger at the software company RealPage for collecting leasing data and using that information to collude with at least 9 landlord and management companies, all in order to keep rent prices high and create a rental monopoly in both the Phoenix and Tucson area.
The companies were actually talking about the algorithm and how much money it was going to make them to their investors.
So what's really interesting is if you look at some of the data included, they say, according to the Attorney General's office, 36% of Phoenix households are renters. They have seen a 76% rent increase from 2016. Meanwhile, in Tucson, 37% of households remain renters with a 30% rent increase. They say several tenants who rent from these companies who are named in the lawsuit say that while prices went up, quote, no physical changes happened in their living areas. They keep getting money from everybody, but I don't know what they are doing with all that money, said one renter who did not want to be identified. So they said, I would say these last 2 years, or last 2 or 3 years, it was a headache. I mean, one of the things they're pointing to and is not only the large landlord organizations, but is the company itself, RealPage, which allows property management, companies and others to enter and to basically enter into some sort of price fixing scheme. And, my advice too is this lady's a Democrat, and this is how you get reelected, and elected, by the way, in a red state, just if you're wondering about the things that real good governance and things really people will pay attention to. If you're able to stop a 76% increase in rent, yeah, that's pretty impactful. You shouldn't forget that.
You know what? Yeah. Arizona has impressed me on a couple of fronts. Right. This being one. Another one is going after those Saudi-backed firms that were buying up all the land and sucking dry all the water. And they're buying up for pennies on the dollar a bunch of medical debt and dismissing it, discharging it, so that the residents of Arizona, can get some relief from this overhang and burden of medical debt, which is really interesting, which we should actually cover on another day. But to get to this particular story, we covered in the past, ProPublica did a whole expose on this company RealPage and their software, which is called YieldStar, and they brag about how they're able to squeeze their tenants and how they're able to effectively collude, as you said. So what happens is all of these landlord companies, they buy access to the YieldStar software. Part of that is they have to enter in all of their information. So YieldStar has all of this non-public information, and then they use that to algorithmically maximize the amount of profit by setting the rents for these companies. So rather than the individual, you go to rent an apartment or whatever, and the individual property manager is setting the rents based on what they can tell of the market and what will sustain, and also based on that human interaction of, I don't want to price this person out of a home. Instead of that, they use an algorithm that has all of this non-public information. So the allegation here is that this is price fixing, because you have, even though there's this intermediary, this tech intermediary, you still have the reality of all of these companies colluding with their private information to be able to maximize and set rents at the highest possible price. And in markets where this becomes incredibly dominant, you have this one company setting the rents for basically the entire market with disastrous results for tenants. What's interesting too is one of the main architects behind YieldStar. This isn't his first trip to the price fixing rodeo. He apparently was Alaska Airlines Director of Revenue Management. I'm reading from ProPublica now. When it and other major airlines began developing price setting software in the 1980s, they had to enter into a consent decree to unwind this price fixing scheme that they had there. He moved on from that to apparently price fixing in the apartment market, rental market, because he has so much experience in that direction. But just to give you a sense of some of what they were saying about this software and what it does, one of the people involved said the net effect of driving revenue and pushing people out, meaning pushing them out of the apartment, was $10 million in income. I think that shows keeping the heads in the beds above all else is not always the best strategy. What they're alluding to there is the fact that they found through this algorithm and through their price fixing ability that it was actually more profitable for a lot of apartment complexes to set prices so high that they actually had some vacancies that they pushed people out, in this person's words, and didn't keep the heads in the beds, all for maximizing absolute revenue. And they also point to the fact that when it is, a human being who is setting these rents and providing the incentives and the breaks, et cetera, that they find it difficult to, be as cold-hearted as profit maximization would demand. So it's a significant issue. I think they are 100% correct. The DOJ actually weighed in on this, which I found really interesting too. They said they filed a statement in support of these tenants. They said automating an anti-competitive scheme does not make it less anti-competitive. Specifically, the Fed said that algorithms themselves are not illegal to use, but rather the way it was being used, with competitors knowingly combining their sensitive non-public pricing and supply information in an algorithm that they rely upon in making pricing decisions, with the knowledge and expectation that other competitors will do the same. That signals to me, if the Biden DOJ is paying attention to this, that they may have a bigger problem than just this Arizona tenant suit.
Well, I would certainly hope so. There's also some state-by-state legislation. We can put C3, please, up on the screen. The Colorado actually now has a bill that's just been introduced to prevent landlords from using algorithms to set rent. They say that currently, quote, renting an apartment in Metro Denver has become so difficult for the average person that the state lawmakers are now trying to prevent these landlords from using the RealPage, YieldStar, or the Yardi Revenue IQ to fix that market to their disadvantage. The law seeks to broadly define a prohibited algorithmic device that says one or more algorithms to perform calculations of data, and that if a landlord is found to have used this prevented device, it would allow tenants to take civil action. Now, I think one of the things I come back to is with this is that it really does come down to entering that non-public information.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if you go on MLS data or apartments.com, Zillow or whatever, you can see what the rental market around you is. This is about getting it before it actually is rented and is making it less of a guessing game, and then also making sure that nobody can undercut your competition. So it really does enter in the realm of collusion and takes away that, kind of free market aspect of what the rental market kind of should be, which is people kind of guessing and thinking and looking around their local area. One of the strengths that people always talk about with small local landlords is that they're, community members, whatever, is that they're, 1 to 5 properties, something like that. And it's not the resources of a giant corporation, which is what you should be afraid of. But this effectively kind of makes them a lobbying block and a price fixing cartel, which is what we should be afraid of in the first place, as to why I oppose corporate, most corporate land ownership in general whenever it comes to rental tenants, because they just try and squeeze every single dollar there is out of you.
Yeah, well, and this goes beyond that, even because part of the allegation here is that because you have, especially in certain cities, you have the overwhelming bulk of the market participating in this scheme. They are effectively acting as a cartel. And the way that works is you set a price arbitrarily high, and you have this agreement that no one's going to come and undercut, because what would bust this up in a typical free market, if someone comes in, sees a market opportunity, is like, oh, well, I can undercut these people with a lower price. I can fill out my apartments much more easily. And then that, causes them to have a problem with their own buildings. If you have them all participating in this scheme, then you've got everybody sort of like agreeing to charge these high prices and no one undercutting them and causing a problem for their cartel price fixing algorithmic scheme. That's the allegation here. So it is encouraging to see a little bit of pushback in a few different states. Hopefully this will be a model for the country. And to your point, Saagar, listen, one of the bright spots in the Biden administration has certainly been the focus on antitrust. You know, there have been some really great appointments like Lena Khan, who've been much more aggressive in trying to sort of not reimagine, but actually restore actual antitrust push from the government and break up some of these large monopolies that have so dominated our economy. We know, we've seen the energy around housing. I mean, it's obvious. The pricing of rents, the pricing of homes, how much pain this is for everybody at a variety of income levels. This would be a great thing for the Biden administration to lean into and talk up and really do something about, because I think this particular case will really be a trial balloon of if they're able to succeed at the judicial level, proving that this is anti-competitive behavior.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It's a story they're definitely very interested in. I know it impacts a lot of you guys out there. You know, the rent inflation is one of the biggest drivers of overall CPI, and it's one of the things that has a huge issue in terms of sucking your money away, your savings rate, and all of that. And I know it's really, really difficult out there. So we'll continue to track it.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.